Revealed. The sinister rules for guests in my cursed cabins hidden in the haunted Rocky Mountains. The sign loomed over them as they pulled off the highway, weathered and ominous. Sinister cabins ahead. Dan chuckled nervously, brushing it off as mountain humor. But Liz felt a shiver dance down her spine. This was supposed to be a family escape from their chaotic lives in Denver, but something felt off. The locals they had passed wore uneasy smiles, their laughter echoing strangely against the backdrop of rugged peaks. An old woman, eyes wide with foreboding, mumbled something about an ancient book and sinister rules. Dan shrugged it off, focused instead on the idea of s'mores and family bonding. They rolled up to their cabin, the air thick with the scent of pine and possibility. Once inside, the rustic charm swallowed them whole. Jacob dashed outside, drawn by the whispers of the wind threading through the towering trees. Emma, smartphone in hand, began to document their magical mountain adventure, oblivious to the tension clinging to the air. Liz and Dan exchanged resigned looks, trying to ignore the gnawing unease nibbling at them. They cracked open beers, the refreshing hiss of the bottles momentarily lifting their spirits. But as sunlight slipped behind the peaks, shadows stretched unnaturally across the cabin walls, warping the familiar into something terrifying. Night enveloped them, and the peaceful chirps of crickets turned into an unsettling symphony of creaks and distant howls. Dan attempted to quell their fears. "It's just the wind," he insisted, though his own heart raced as the shadows flickered ominously. Emma set up her phone, capturing the serene facade with relentless determination. "Mountain magic," she exclaimed, but a grotesque shadow loomed just beyond the light, waiting. A sudden clang echoed outside, piercing the calm. The family froze. Emma gasped. Her phone's screen flickered and went dark. Panic rippled through Liz, tightness gripping her chest as she sensed Jacob's slight frame trembling beside her. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his eyes wide with malice incarnate reflected in the dark woods. Dan's bravado shattered as he moved toward the door. "It's probably just an animal," he muttered, external assurance not matching the icy grip of fear in his gut. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with that cutoff." Dan yanked the door open, stepping into the blackness that felt alive, throbbing with unseen dangers. As he crossed the threshold, the air thickened, swirling with apprehensive energy. The laughter of the locals echoed menacingly in his ears, mixing with a long-forgotten warning about the trees that watched. Dawn broke with an agonizing slowness, but the feeling of safety eluded them. Roads twisted like veins through a living creature, as if the mountains themselves conspired against their escape. They returned to the cabin, worn and on edge, only to find the ancient book the woman had mentioned, a weathered tome lying wide open on the table, pages flipping wildly as if desperately trying to communicate some cryptic message. As their gazes locked, the weight of realization crashed over them. Chilling words danced on the pages, whispering promises of dark secrets and unseen consequences. They exchanged anxious glances, grappling with the truth that they were not merely visitors but unwitting players in a trap strung tight with sinuous rules that bound their fate. As they stood paralyzed, the restless trees rustled outside, the darkness thickening, waiting for them to make their next move. Panic seeped into every corner of the cabin. Liz's breath caught in her throat as she backed away, eyes glued to the book. What was this place? The words seemed to shift and writhe in the dim light, indistinct phrases hinting at betrayal and curses. She could almost hear their faint murmurs, like sirens calling her towards doom. "Mom! Dad! Look!" Emma exclaimed, her voice a desperate plea. Liz turned just in time to see Emma's phone flicker back to life, flashing eerie images taken outside. The stillness of the woods was deceptive, Yet the phone screen revealed that something moved within a grotesque shape with too many limbs spreading across the forest. The haunting specter twisted and danced beyond normal comprehension. Jacob shrieked, covering his eyes. Yet Emma was entranced, staring at the screen like it was a portal to another world. "Shut it off, please," Liz shouted, struggling to break through the tension. Dan rushed over, attempting to grab the phone, but Emma flinched away, transfixed by something only she could see. "Something is out there," Jacob whimpered, his back pressing into the cold wall. The shadows twisted and elongated, as if trying to invade their space. Liz felt their threat press against her, and she turned towards Dan, searching for reassurance. "I'm sure it's nothing. We're just letting our imaginations get the best of us," before he could finish. A thunderous crash rang from outside, shaking the cabin. Instinctively, Dan slammed the door shut, locking it. But the noise of something scraping against the cabin made his heart race. Liz felt the temperature drop, and her skin pricked with cold sweat. "Did you hear that?" Liz whispered, gripping Dan's arm. The sound echoed again, louder this time. A low, grating gnarl that made the older would groan in protest came from beneath the cabin. Every floorboard vibrated slightly, as if something was disturbing the very foundation they stood upon. Emma's phone went dark again, plunging them into a heavier darkness. "I can't see anything." She sounded helpless as the screen blanked out, her connection to light severed. "Let us get the emergency lanterns," Dan urged. The air felt thick, smothering. He stepped away towards the closet, the only area not weighed down by the encroaching fear. A series of heavy thuds pounded outside, shaking the ground under their feet. Jacob's small voice trembled. "What if it's already in here?" The abrupt chant of the ancient book escalated, each word punctuating the rattling of the cabin. Timid breaths intermingled with disturbing creaks above them. Each exhale seemed to amplify the sensation that eyes were peering at them through the walls, probing their minds, seeking their weakness. "Dad?" Emma stuttered. "What if we?" But Liz was already racing toward the front window. Her heart raced as she peered cautiously through the cracked pane. Nothing anchored in the moonlight, not even a hint of what lurked beyond. "Mom, please come back," Jacob urged. Suddenly, a dissonant wheeze erupted from the front porch. It echoed and spread like wildfire, the sound creeping under Liz's skin, igniting primal fear. Her instincts screamed to flee, but her limbs felt paralyzed. Whatever was out there had cast its spell, binding them inside. "Now!" Dan yelled suddenly, rushing back to grab her arm. They had to act before whatever stalked them broke through. As they stumbled towards the cabin door, Liz's heart plummeted when she caught sight of shadows flitting just outside the periphery, blurred figures drifting in and out of reality. The old woman's warnings echoed in her mind. Sinister rules as the lantern flickered to life, illuminating their frantic faces. They spun around to face the book again, realizing too late that something had changed. The words now glowed with malevolent intent, ready to draw another victim into its dark embrace. Behind them, a hollow croaking voice seeped in through the cracks. "Two shall be lost, who will remain?" Time stretched painfully thin as they prepared for whatever horror awaited them behind the door. Would they understand the ancient curse before it consumed them completely? The air charged with an impending sense of doom, swirling impossibly tight around them. What had they awakened? The air trembled, thick with impending dread, as the light from the lantern flickered, casting long, exaggerated shadows across the cabin walls. Liz stared at the book, her heart pounding like a war drum. The words pulsated in a rhythm that seemed mocking, taunting them. A deep-seated instinct demanded they flee, yet curiosity held her captive. Dan held Emma close, both of them trembling in the dim light. Jacob clung to Liz, wide-eyed, as if he could sense the shadow lurking just beyond the door. "What does that mean?" Emma whispered, her voice breaking. Maybe it's just nonsense," Liz said, searching for strength in her own voice, but it crumbled like dust. She could feel the pressure building, not just around them but inside her, like a shout held within a throat constricted by fear. "We can't think like that," she added, trying to sound more convincing. But before anyone could respond, the whispers intensified. They swirled around them, threading through the very air they breathed. An indiscernible chant twisted into a cacophony of despair. Liz gripped the lantern tightly, its warm glow flickering like a heartbeat in the encroaching night. Maybe if we read it aloud, it will tell us what to do, Emma suggested, hope flickering in her uncertain tone. No, it can't be that simple, Dan protested, glancing fearfully at the shadows dancing just beyond their vision. But Emma was already reaching for the book. Against Liz's better judgment, she felt the urge to defend her daughter. Wait, don't. The instant Emma opened the book, the cabin trembled and the air thickened. The words erupted into a mad whirlpool of black ink, snaking out of the pages and coiling around Emma's wrist like vines. The air crackled and twisted, an electric discordant pitch, as the flickering lantern's light spluttered against the darkness that pulsed and surged around them. Emma! Liz screamed, lunging toward her daughter as the tendrils of ink tightened like a serpent. But Dan yanked her back, his face drawn and pale. Don't touch it, he yelled, panic threading his tone. It'll pull you in. Emma gasped, the ink-like energy extinguishing the glow of hope in her eyes, her face contorting in fear. The book screeched, rattling with venomous laughter, each sound scraping against their sanity. Jacob's whispers turned into frantic sobs. Make it stop, he cried, pressing against the wall, desperate to merge with the wood as if it could shield him from the horror. Listen, Dan shouted over the chaos, straining against the cacophony. We need to counter the curse, break whatever hold it has. We can't let it take her. Before anybody could respond, the door creaked ominously, relinquishing a sliver of moonlight that cut through the twisted shadows. A figure emerged at the edge but faded instantly, only to be replaced by a million overlapping faces, their mouths moving, screaming words that wouldn't reach their ears. Everything felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Liz, the lantern. Use it, Dan barked, the urgency in his voice piercing through her shock. With shaky hands, she held the lantern up, illuminating Emma in a spiral of wavering light. Fight it, Emma, Liz shouted, tears blurring her vision. Emma's eyes flared, a spark emerging through the ink's grasp as she struggled against the words binding her. I can't hold on, she gasped, the terror consuming her voice. Outside, that low, slithering croak returned, wrapping around them, threatening to share its ancient malice. And then, Liz noticed the book's glow waver, a battle between the light and the darkness storming within. Stand firm, Dan cried, pulling Jacob closer. We can't let it win. The energy inside the cabin surged, plucking at their senses, binding them to unseen forces. Liz felt reality teetering dangerously as the walls closed in, disorientation rising like bile in her throat. Two shall be lost. That bone-chilling whisper resonated once more, but this time it carried a suffocating certainty. Who will remain? The question hung in the air like a thorn, coiling their anxieties and fears. With one final desperate act, Liz reached for the book, ready to challenge whatever fate awaited them, determined to fight for her family. But the very instant their hands met the leather cover, the world around them dissolved into chaos, reality splintering at their feet. What other horrors lay buried in that cursed text? As Liz's heart raced, she knew that understanding the sinister rules was just the beginning. And the question echoed, who among them would pay the ultimate price? The walls shuddered, and a terrible wind roared through the cabin, extinguishing the lantern's warm glow. Shadows danced chaotically, twisting and writhing as if alive. Liz felt the ground shift beneath her like a serpent stirring restlessly. The words of the cursed book swirled around them, a storm of ink and dread. Mom! Emma's voice pierced through the darkness, trembling with fear. Liz could barely see her through the choking blackness. As the tendrils of ink constricted tighter, Emma seemed to shrink under their weight. Fight it, Emma! Dan's shout cut through the panic, but the desperation in his voice echoed, futile against the howling wind. They were losing her. Suddenly, Liz felt a tug on her arm. Jacob. His fingers were icy and trembling. We have to go, Mom. Now. He pulled her toward the door. A primal instinct fought against Liz's need to save Emma, but the shadowy whispers wrapped around her, pulling her deeper into their sinister embrace. No, Liz shouted, torn between her children. Dan was finally breaking free of his shock, moving toward Emma with determination, his eyes filled with fierce resolve. Before she could stop him, Dan lunged forward, grasping Emma's shoulders. The ink snapped violently. Emitting a wailing noise, it withdrew just enough for Dan to free her. But as she stumbled, gasping for breath, the shadows roared in fury. They lashed out, snatching Dan with chilling speed. Dan! Liz screamed, the sound clawing at her throat. He vanished into the dark, swallowed whole by the malevolent force. Terror surged through Liz like ice water. She felt her heart pound, every beat echoing a desperate prayer. With urgency eclipsing her grief, she grabbed Emma. Run, Jacob. We have to get out. They struggled toward the door, every step feeling like a contest against the weight of the world. With a wrenching effort, they burst outside into the thick, cold air. Behind them, the cabin loomed like a brooding monster, shadows licking at the doorframe. But Liz didn't stop. She launched into the forest, pulling Emma and Jacob along. The trees whispered their secrets, rustling in the wind, mocking their attempt to escape. Where do we go? Emma gasped, glancing over her shoulder. What about Dad? We need to keep moving, Liz urged, panic lacing her words. Her mind raced with 1,000 possibilities. The book, the shadows, the dark whispering they had to return to it. That where the answers lay, or perhaps the way to rescue Dan. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and from the shadows emerged shapes that twisted impossibly. The faces from the cabin, those overlapping nightmares, stared at them, mouths opening in silent screams, accusing and hollow. Liz skidded to a stop, the sickening dread settling heavily in her gut. What do they want? Jacob whimpered, clutching her hand. Emma's eyes widened in realization. The book. It must have told them to come after us. Yet, even their flight felt futile as the specters crept closer, coalescing into a tangible terror that threatened to take them back. We can't let them take us. We have to go back in, Liz said, voice faltering. Are you crazy? Jacob whispered, panic rising in his chest. But Liz's instincts kicked in, driving her toward the clearing where the cabin stood eerily illuminated by the moonlight. We can't leave Dad. Before they could debate further, something heavy crashed into the ground nearby. A grotesque form curled outward, forming a mouth lined with rows of sharp teeth that gleamed in the moonlight. Something about its presence felt all too familiar and utterly wrong. Mom! What is that? Emma shouted in the moment of chilling clarity. Liz understood what they were facing. The depths of their own destruction manifesting before them. They had all been drawn into a trap, one spun tightly by the sinister rules themselves. Was it too late to change their fate? Would they have to sacrifice themselves to save Dan? Or risk everything to confront that which should never be faced? The moon hid behind clouds. The creature almost smiled as the whispers reached a crescendo, drowning out reason, laughter echoing through the woods, asking an unbearable question. Are you willing to pay the price for what you desire? With horror gripping her heart, Liz realized the answer might not just cost them their lives. It beckoned a fate even darker than death. Could they possibly escape unscathed? Or was something irrevocably lost forever? The grotesque creature loomed closer, teeth glinting in the fading light, each movement sending shudders through the earth. Liz's heart raced. Terror clawed at her throat. We need to go now, she screamed, pulling Emma and Jacob back toward the cabin. But the twisted shadows encircled them. Each step backward felt like stepping deeper into a pit of despair. The whispers intensified, slithering into her mind. The promise no, the demand echoed louder. Were they truly ready to pay the price? Mom, make it stop, Jacob cried, eyes wide and glimmering with tears. Liz clenched his hand tighter, feeling the chill seep through her skin. No, we can't lose each other. Not like this, Liz shouted, her stomach twisting in knots. She could still feel Dana's presence somewhere within the cabin, lost in that suffocating darkness. A flicker of courage ignited within her. We have to confront it. We have to face it together. She turned to her children, their fear palpable, but she needed them to be strong. Trust me. With a ragged breath, she dashed towards the cabin, shadowy forms hissing around them. The whispers became a cacophony, words twisting and curling through the air like curling smoke. Liz felt herself being pulled toward the entrance, a force beckoning her closer. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, blocking their path. It was Dan, but his eyes were hollow, empty, newly constructed from darkness. Liz, Emma, Jacob, help me. His voice was a distant echo. Her heart sank as she recognized the terrible change that had overtaken him. Dad, Emma cried, the one word hanging in the air like broken glass. Run. Get away from here. Dan's once familiar face twisted into anguish, the shadows clawing at his body, trying to consume him. You have to leave. You can't. Before he could finish, the creature lunged at him, jaws snapping. Liz instinctively shielded her children, the urge to protect overwhelming. No, she shouted, anger surging in her veins. Stop, she cried, wishing for control, but the shadows seemed to pulse with laughter, mocking her desperate plea. The creature turned its attention to them, hunger glimmering in its eyes. In that instant, something deep inside Liz stirred a fierce determination to not let fear dictate their fate. She needed to act. We have to get back to the book. It's our only chance to save Dad. Mom, you're crazy, Jacob shouted, but as the clamoring shadows swirled closer, hiding all boundaries of safety, the urgency in his voice turned to an edge of compliance. Together, Liz urged, igniting a flicker of hope as they sprinted back toward the cabin. The walls loomed before them, warped and menacing, but she minded not the dread that brushed against her skin like thorns. The door swung open, creaking in protest. Inside, darkness thickened, swirling like a living entity eager to consume them whole. The whispers beckoned, coaxing, trying to sow seeds of doubt. Liz bolted forward, chasing the pull of the cursed book that lay atop the table, its cover alive with malignant energy. Emma and Jacob hesitated at the threshold, the weight of fear pinning them down. We can't leave him, Liz shouted back, glancing over her shoulder at the grotesque form writhing outside, its hunger steadily rising. Just as they were almost at the table, the floorboards creaked ominously underfoot, echoing a grumbling warning. Liz reached out for the book, her fingers brushing against the pages. Suddenly, the cabin quaked, the walls whispering secrets of old, a gnarly laugh bustling through the air. In a split second, shadows lashed out, wrapping around her, pulling, tugging mercilessly. Mom! Emma screamed. Hold on, Liz shouted, wrestling against the dark tendrils. They would not take her. She wouldn't allow it. But the moment stretched, each second an eternity. The walls closed in, darkness thrumming with wicked intent, threatening to swallow them all at end. That consuming chaos. Liz felt something shift within something primal, a force beckoning from the pages of the book. It stirred life long forgotten, entwined with fear, leading her to an impossible choice. What if the price was higher than any of them could imagine? As the shadowy creature howled outside, Liz wondered if the cost would be worth the chance to save Dan, her children and their very souls. Would she dare to pay the price for unfulfilled desires? The answer lurked within the darkness, waiting for her to choose. But fate has a twisted sense of irony, and the book held secrets that might tear them apart forever. The whispers grew louder as she gripped the book. Your desires can become your undoing. Would they have the courage to confront their destiny, or would the shadows claim them in the end? The shadows tightened around Liz, as if they smelled her fear. She could feel the book pulsing in her hands, cold and desperate. The whispers transformed into a chorus of malevolent voices, each one a shred of her doubts, her memories, tangled in the darkness. You cannot fight fate, they hissed. You must pay the price. Mom, what do we do? Jacob's voice cut through the din, trembled, shadowed by desperation. "We're getting Dad back," Liz shouted, drowning out the growing darkness. Ignoring the pain biting at her soul, she tore through the tendrils wrapping around her, drawing strength from the love for her children. The book's cover gleamed brighter, almost alive, and she felt a torrent of energy flowing through her fingers. "Get away from her," Emma added, mustering her courage, fists shaking in defiance. Liz nodded, her heart pounding with an unexpected rush of hope. This wasn't just about them anymore. Dan needed them, and she would not let the shadows take him or them. She flipped open the book, pages brimming with twisted theorems of darkness. They glowed faintly, signs of ancient power lurking within. As she scanned the words, she felt a weight settle in her chest. Confusion swirling. Would any incantation truly help? Would it save Dan, or drive them deeper into this nightmare? The whispers escalated into wild cacophony, unintelligible now, a storm of sound that threatened to sweep her away. It was too much. She pressed her trembling finger onto the page. "Silence!" The command erupted through her, a fierce bellow that echoed off the cabin walls. The shadows hissed, recoiling momentarily, giving her precious seconds. "Listen," Liz shouted, her voice sharp and clear. "We can break this curse. We have to believe." She focused on her children. "Follow me. Let us summon the light." With that, she began to recite the incantation she barely understood. The room trembled. The shadows shook, and the darkness clawed at Liz's soul as if trying to rip her apart. Simultaneously, the air crackled with energy, and streaks of fire flared in the corners of the room. But then a thundering roar erupted outside, drowning out her incantation. The creature's twisted form reared back, eyes blazing with fury and hunger. Gnarled limbs snapped like dry branches as it charged toward the cabin door, slamming the weight of its mass against it. "Mom! It's coming!" Jacob screamed, eyes wide in horror. "Hold on," Liz shouted. She pressed harder against the book, words spilling fast. She felt the world around them narrowing, struggling to reshape itself. She was losing them, losing everything, and in that moment, she made a choice. "Ancient shadows, hear my plea. Bind this beast so it may never be free." The walls trembled violently, and Liz felt a surge of light erupting from her core, flooding the room. It pulsed with her heartbeat, each thump resonated, drawing strength from her family's love. A brilliant flash exploded, illuminating the cabin. The shadows shrieked, a terrible chorus of wails, clawing back from the light that burned with fierce fury. Yet even amid this blinding revelation, she felt the strength waning. What if it's not enough? A voice whispered in her ear, menacing, doubt trickling in like poison. Then came the knowledge of the choice ahead. What if the only way to keep the creature at bay would be to sacrifice a part of herself? The catch, the true cost, would leave them vulnerable and split their fates. "Mom!" Emma cried, her voice cutting through the haze like glass shattering. "Don't!" But Liz wavered, heart pounding, a tempest of swirling doubts merging with visceral dread. Could she risk it all? The answer flickered in the depths of the chaos, the desire to protect her family and save Dan. As the light worsened, shadows converged around them once more, a swirling tempest of terror. "Let us finish this," Liz shouted with a courage she didn't fully feel. What would they truly face if she pressed on? With raw determination, she forged ahead, weaving the words, hoping to snare the wicked beast in the binding spell. But as the creature lunged at the door, revelations dashed against her mind. What darkness lay beneath those words? What price would she pay? Would they emerge whole, or would this battle rip them further asunder? The shadows twisted eagerly, waiting for the moment she would falter. The snap of wood cracking echoed in the air like thunder, sending a pulse of dread through Liz. Something malevolent was on the other side, eager to tear through and claim its prize. She could feel the creature's dark energy rolling in waves, crashing against the weakening light around them. "Mom! It's gonna break in!" Jacob's voice quaked, his small body pressing tightly against her leg. Emma clutched the fabric of Liz's shirt, her knuckles turning white. "Focus. We're almost there," Liz shouted, drawing in breath to push further into the incantation. The book trembled in her hands, its pages fluttering violently. The words seemed to twist on the page, taunting her with indecipherable meanings, like a secret she was too fragile to uncover. A thunderous crash resonated. The front door splintered, fragments flying inward. The darkness surged through the opening, flooding the cabin like a monstrous tide. Liz felt terror sharp and cold slicing through her, every layer of her resolve invaded by a gnawing fear. "Ancient shadows, we summon your power," she cried, channeling every ounce of her love for her children into those desperate words. She could feel the warmth of their bond, pushing against the cold depths of despair. But then, the monstrous form erupted through the wreckage, twisted and ghastly. Its eyes glowed with profound hunger. It paused, drawn in by the essence of her spell, as if its very nature was repulsed by the light. "You will regret this," it hissed, voice like a broken record scratching against the depths of her mind. "Fate is inescapable." "Mom!" Emma screamed as the beast lunged. In that instant, the cabin flickered, shadows colliding with her protective light in a violent clash. Liz's heart raced, pounding against her ribs like a frantic animal. The spell's light dimmed, flickering like a candle in a storm as if responding to her wavering courage. "No, we're stronger than you," Liz bellowed, her voice thick with fear but bolstered by an iron will. "Ancient shadows, bind this beast to its fate." The pulsating glow from the book intensified, fighting back against the oppressive darkness. But Liz felt the tether to her own strength slowly unraveling. Shadows clawed at her mind, a cacophony of her deepest regrets and fears. Images of Dan flashed his laughter, their happy moments filling her with renewed determination. "I will not lose my family," she roared. "We are the light." And just like that, the words became a weapon. Liz pressed on, her voice rising, resonating with the old power inside the book. A blinding light erupted from it, slicing through the darkness. The creature reeled back, shrieking as the light engulfed it, twisting its form and dark screams into a spiral of tumult. But with the creature's wails, doubt re-entered Liz's mind. The price of power and protection spiraled ominously close. Would this be enough to save Dan? Or would she unwittingly sacrifice herself, leaving her children vulnerable? "Mom, it's too much," Jacob shouted, panic drowning his small voice. Liz turned, brushing her fingers against each childish cheek, searching their eyes for hope. They were scared but filled with the same flicker of strength she clung to. At that moment, Liz understood part of the prophecy. The beast feasted on fear, but also on choice. "We face this together," she declared, adding her children's names to the incantation. "We are stronger united." The light surged around them, battling the shadows relentlessly, until a sudden crack reverberated through the air, drowning their chant in ominous silence. "What was that?" Emma whispered, dread curling her voice. And then, beyond the cabin, something shifted. A pair of glowing eyes emerged from the woods, watching, waiting what lay out there, lurking in the dark, beyond what they could see. And would it come for them next? The silence stretched like a taut wire, humming with anxiety. Liz felt her pulse quicken, a frantic tattoo drumming in her ears. The glowing eyes blinked slowly, almost deliberately, as if savoring the children's terror. The air thickened with the weight of its gaze, and Liz couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse than a mere beast lingered just beyond the edge of the light. "Mom," Emma whimpered, her voice a fragile whisper. "What is it?" "Stay close," Liz replied, gripping the book tightly. Its heat felt reassuring against her clammy palms. The shadows shifted as the creature writhed at the threshold, caught in the glow of the protective spell. But those eyes, they held a hunger Liz couldn't fathom, an appetite for chaos. The beast struggled to free itself from the light, its long claws scraping against the floorboards, leaving blackened marks as it pushed against the barrier. Liz could barely breathe. She focused harder, trying to keep the incantation flowing, but every passing moment made her heart sink deeper into despair. From outside, a guttural growl reverberated through the cabin, rolling like thunder, promising destruction. Liz glanced back at her children. Jacob's chin quivered, while Emma's eyes glistened with fear. They were her anchor, yet the gravity of the creature's darkness drew at her like a storm. "Focus, Liz," she chanted internally, pulling together what little strength remained. "I can't let them become prey." And then she noticed it. The eyes outside had multiplied. Flickers of sinister glows circled the cabin like vultures on a carcass. Shapes emerged, slim and twisted, shadows that crept closer, drawn to the terror permeating the air. "Mom!" Jacob shouted, pointing at the windows as cracks filled the glass from the pressure outside. "They're coming." The spell's light flickered, wavering under the weight of encroaching doom. Liz felt her grip begin to fail as something inside her pushed to shatter. "Ancient shadows, we are your masters," she shouted, desperation pouring into her words. The dark things halted for a moment, as if caught by her command. An innocent flicker of hope flared in Liz's heart. But as quick as it came, it was dashed by the realization that something deeper was wrong. The shadows were not mere creatures but fragments of fear, regrets incarnate. "Let them go," the beast hissed again. "You can't win. Not against the truth of your hearts." Liz felt cold steel wrapping around her. Doubt had plunged its claws into her resolve. She chased after the dark tendrils of her mind, Dennis' absence, the empty spaces in her life, the heart-wrenching decision to flee from the very ties of love. Was their survival worth risking everything? "No," she said, throwing the thought away as if it were a snare. She returned her fierce gaze to the twisting darkness. "I would sacrifice everything for my children." In that moment, a sudden roar erupted from the woods, a sound that cracked through the darkness. Suddenly, the glowing eyes flashed, scattering like sprayed ink in water. Liz took a breath, searching the darkness but not finding the cheerless shapes. But it wasn't over. A dreadful weight pressed down on her heart as she sensed more than mere shadows. In the darkness surrounding them, solid shapes began to emerge, feeling familiar and yet ominous, figures long lost, warning her, beckoning her, drawing near. It wasn't just the beast she fought. It was her very soul, rising in defiance of those who had come to haunt her. "Come, remember," a voice whispered, resonating through the shadowed air. "You can't escape what you've hidden." Liz's heart dropped. "Mom, what's happening?" Emma cried, pulling at her shirt. She turned, eyes wide with realization and dread. What memories had awakened, waiting for her, urging her toward their inevitability? Before she could answer, the shadows coalesced again, swirling violently, forming a shape she dared not comprehend. "No!" she gasped, the figures solidifying in front of the children, with faces that held both love and accusation. The finality of confrontation loomed ever closer. She could not escape. Liz took a step back as everything trembled. The truth hovered just out of reach. Would confronting the darkness within set them free or seal their fates? As anxiety flashed through her, the shadows wrapped tighter around her, pulling her deeper into the past she fought so hard to forget. Then, from the woods, a chilling laughter echoed, sending shivers down her spine. "Are you ready to face what remains?" the sinister voice sang. Would Liz find the strength to protect her family? Or would the shadows seep into their souls, twisting every precious memory? The night deepened as fear clawed at her throat, and the urgency in the air swallowed them whole. The ground shook beneath them, and Liz stumbled. The figures in the shadows drew nearer, their faces shifting between anger and sorrow, sharp features breaking the delicate fabric of memories she had buried deep. "You left us," one of the specters mouthed, though no sound emerged. The accusation hovered in the air, an unrelenting weight pressing into her heart. "Mom," Jacob whimpered, clutching Emma's arm. They squeezed closer to Liz, seeking solace in her presence. But she felt less like a shield and more like a candle, flickering in a storm, the flame barely holding against the extinguishing wind. Liz's mind raced. What did they want from her? She thought she had escaped her past. The shadowy figures were not just specters haunting the cabin. They were elements of her very own history, ragged and frayed, looking to pull her down into their depths. The beast outside roared, a reminder that time was slipping away. "Enough!" she shouted, forcing her will into the space between them and the nightmare. "You won't take my children." The shadowy figures faltered, but the beast's claws scraped at the barrier, eager and relentless. As if in response to her defiance, the air grew thick with despair. The whispers echoed louder, swarming like wasps, filling her mind with self-doubt, with sorrow. "You think you can keep them safe?" You know the truth that lurks in their hearts. Images flashed before her, her husband's face twisted in disappointment. The sound of breaking glass as the door slammed shut, leaving haunting silence in its wake. The memories gnawed at her, hungry like the eyes beyond the cabin. Each pair of eyes outside had a story, a pain that she had ignored, buried under the weight of her own grief. "Mom!" Emma's voice pierced through the fog, desperation lacing her words. "What do they want?" Before Liz could respond, the walls of the cabin trembled, and one figure stepped forward, solidifying with chilling clarity. It was her mother, her once warm smile twisted into a frown of betrayal. "You can't change what you are, Liz. You own this darkness. You always have." Sweat dripped from Liz's brow, her heart thumping like a war drum. "I want tea," but even her voice faltered as her mother raised a translucent hand, beckoning her forward. "You've been running from us, Liz, from your choices. You created this fear you're fighting against. Only by facing it can you protect them." Suddenly, the beast outside lunged, and the entire cabin shook further. The protective light flickered, its power waning as her anger turned inward. What if they were right? What if her past could breach the barricade and find its way to her children? A shudder of panic gripped her. Liz felt a terror leap in her throat. "No, I won't let you do this," she screamed, refocusing on the incantation, forcing the spells she memorized into the atmosphere. But the words crumbled in her mouth, laced with doubt. The shadows began to merge, a torrent of darkness swirling ferociously around the cabin, closing in on her like a net. She gasped, backing away, but the figures were relentless, reaching out, their cold fingers grazing her skin. "Remember us," came the ghostly chorus, echoing with each breath Liz took. Time was running out. The glowing eyes flickered once more, rejoining the massing shadows, eager to feast on the flickering light of her resolve. "I won't let them take you," she shouted, channeling whatever strength remained. But the battle within was far harder than that outside. With each passing moment, the figures loomed larger, growing more defined. The past is unchangeable. You can't escape its grasp forever. With a final roar, the beast lunged at the cabin's heart, and Liz felt the very foundation of her being quiver. Would she be able to shield her children from the truth? Or would they all be swallowed whole, caught in the tempest of her past secrets? As silence fell, thicker than the encroaching shadows, Liz's breath caught. Time froze. "Prepare to face what you've buried." The sinister voice echoed one last time as the darkness rushed in, as if anticipating its inevitable triumph. What choice could she make now? The fog of rage and doubt closed in like a predator. As fear curled tighter around her throat, Liz knew they were on the brink of something terrifying. Would her confrontation with the shadows lead to salvation or doom? And in that suspended moment, Liz's heart thumped in her chest, each beat echoing a question. Could she withstand the might of what lay hidden within? The silence shattered like glass, cutting through the tension-laden air. Liz stood, trembling, clutching the cursed book as shadows writhed all around. The beast outside roared, pounding against the cabin, each thud reverberating like the ominous heartbeat of a monster eager to feast. She felt her children's fear wrapping around her like an icy grip, tightening around her heart. "Mom, what do we do?" Jacob's pleas yanked her back to the nightmare unfolding, his eyes glistening wide with terror. "Stay with me," Liz shouted, summoning her fading strength. The faint glow from the book pulsed, offering a sliver of hope. It was now or never. "We need to face this together." But as she began to chant, the familiar weight of her past surged forward, a tidal wave crashing against her defenses, a cacophony of guilt and doubt. You ran away from us? The specter of her mother echoed, hauntingly close, as if emerging from the shadows themselves, shifting and swirling around her like thick fog. Shut up. Liz felt the suffocating grip of despair clutch her throat, choking on the bitter remnants of what she tried to escape. I won't let you take my children. Will you really protect them? The voice mocked, intertwining with the beast's growls. You never faced the truth. The shadows lunged, closing in on her like 1,000 accusing fingers. Panic surged, mixing with defiance. In those terrifying moments, Liz grasped the shimmering truth buried deep within. She must confront what she'd hidden, not for herself but to save her children. Focus, Liz. Emma's voice broke through the haze, shaking Liz back to reality. The strength in her daughter's gaze grounded her, sparking courage. With newfound resolve, Liz turned to the book, reciting the ancient incantation. Ancient shadows, hear my plea. Bind this beast so it may never be free. The words resonated, mixing with the pulsing light that radiated, pushing the darkness back. The cabin shook, the air crackled with energy, and the beast howled in despair as the shadows encircled it tighter. Liz felt the shadow's grip falter, and in that moment, she caught her children's hopeful eyes shining through the darkness. Their bond fueled her willpower, the essence of her protective love burning brightly behind her fear. Together we're stronger, she shouted, channeling every part of herself into the incantation, imprinting her desire to protect her family. The shadows hissed but were forced back, writhing against the brilliant light. The creature screeched, its form flickering and dissolving with each repeated command. Each time Liz spoke, she felt a piece of her old fears crumble away. Finally, with her last ounce of determination, she screamed, by the ties of blood and love, I command you be bound forever. A burst of light exploded from the book, cascading through the cabin and illuminating every dark corner. The shadows howled, shrieking in agony, as they fed off the light. The beast screamed, a wail of defeat that curled around Liz's heart, echoing like thunder. In that moment, she felt Dana's presence flood back into her mind, a memory of warmth and laughter, of a family united against the dark. Tears streamed down Liz's face, and she wrapped her arms around Jacob and Emma, holding them tightly. We're breaking the cycle. We'll face this together. As the light surged, the shadows fractured, dissolving into the ether as the creature was pulled inexorably into darkness, its form melting away amidst furious screams that finally faded into silence. And then there was stillness. Liz gasped, breathing in the clean, crisp air. She blinked through her tears, and the once menacing cabin suddenly felt less monstrous, as if the weight of the dark energy had been lifted. The oppressive shackles of fear crumbled, leaving nothing but echoes of what had once threatened to consume them. Mom? Jacob's voice was soft, still shaky, but filled with something other than fear. Did we win? Liz looked at her children, their faces shining with light, and she nodded, joy blooming in her chest. We did, she whispered, pulling them both into a fierce embrace. We did it together. We're safe now. As dawn broke, the warmth of the sun flooded through the windows, illuminating the once haunted cabin. They stepped outside, greeted by the tranquil beauty of the Rocky Mountains. The shadows of the past no longer loomed over them. A new beginning unfurled before them like fresh green leaves after winter. Let us go home, Liz said, her heart lighter. They took each other's hands, stepping forward together, leaving the darkness behind. But as they walked away, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. In its whisper, Liz felt a promise that they had faced the darkness and emerged unscathed, ready to write their own stories, free from the sinister rules that once held sway over them. The world opened up before them, and Liz knew they wouldn't face another shadow without the light of each other's love. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and share your reactions. Flood the comments section with your theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this thrilling conclusion. The time is now. Show your support.